Talmud Bavli, Tractate Beitzah, page 15, A, top of the page, the words Ela Bekashin. Rather, it is referring to hard clothes upon which it is permitted to sit, even if they are a mixture of wool and linen. And this is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, who said, with regard to hard felt, namta, material produced in the town of Neresh, it is permitted to sit or recline on it, and one need not be concerned about the fact that it is a mixture of wool and linen. Rav Papa said with regard to felt socks, ardalayin, there is no prohibition of diverse kinds regarding them, as they are hard. Rava said, these bundles for coins, comprised of hard fabric or felt, there is no prohibition of diverse kinds with regard to them. However, with regard to pouches for holding seeds, there is a prohibition of diverse kinds with regard to them, as they are larger and softer than both felt socks and hard bundles for coins. Rav Ashi said both this and that have no prohibition of diverse kinds with regard to them, because using these items is not the usual manner of keeping warm. Even if these objects are placed close to one's skin, this is not the usual way of wearing clothes and warming oneself, and therefore they are permitted. The Mishnah taught, however, one may not send a spiked sandal on a festival. The Gemara asks, a spiked sandal? What is the reason that it may not be worn? The Gemara answers, it is due to an incident that occurred. A great tragedy resulted when people wore spiked sandals on Shabbat, which led the sages to decree that these sandals may not be worn on a Shabbat or festival. Abaye said, with regard to a spiked sandal, it is prohibited to wear on Shabbat, but it is permitted to move it. He clarifies it is permitted to wear a spiked sandal due to the incident that occurred, and it is permitted to move it from the fact that the Mishnah teaches one may not send. For if it enters your mind that it is prohibited even to move a spiked sandal, now consider if it were permitted to move it, is the Mishnah required to state that one may send it? Rather, it must certainly be permitted to move a spiked sandal inside the house, despite the fact that one may not wear it. The Mishnah further teaches, nor may one send an unsewn shoe on a festival. The Gemara asks, this is obvious, as these shoes are unfit for wearing. The Gemara answers, this statement was necessary only to teach that although the shoe is attached with pins and can be worn, it may not be sent on a festival, since it is not properly sewn, it is not usually worn. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Yehuda says, one may not even send a white shoe. It is taught in a Beitzah, Rabbi Yehuda permits the sending of a black shoe, but prohibits the sending of a white one, because a white one requires a lump of chalk to color it properly. Rabbi Yossi prohibits the sending of a black shoe, because one needs to polish it. The Gemara comments, and they do not disagree with regard to the halakha, as this sage ruled in accordance with the custom of his locale, and this sage rules differently in accordance with the custom of his locale. In the place of this sage, Rabbi Yehuda, the leather was made so that the side of the hide facing the flesh is on the underneath, facing the inside of the shoe, and therefore it does not require polishing. Whereas in the place of that sage, Rabbi Yossi, the leather was made so that the side of the hide facing the flesh is above, facing the outside of the shoe. That side is often cracked and uneven and requires smoothing and polishing. The Mishnah taught that this is the general principle. With regard to any article that one may use on a festival, one may send it. The Gemara relates, Rosh Sheshet permitted the sages to send phylacteries, tefillin, on a festival. Abai said to him, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah, with regard to any article that one may use on a festival, one may send it? Phylacteries are not worn on festivals. The Gemara answers, this is what the Mishnah is saying. With regard to any article that one may use on a weekday, one may send it on a festival. I would think that that's obvious. I don't know. I mean, if you can use it on a weekday, you can send it on a festival. Oh, maybe not obvious. Okay. Abaye said, with regard to phylacteries, since this topic has come before us in the previous discussion, let us say a novel matter about it. If someone was coming on the road on the eve of Shabbat or festival, and he had phylacteries on his head, as the practice was then to don phylacteries the entire day, but not at night, and the sun set before he arrived at his destination, signaling the beginning of Shabbat or festival, when phylacteries may not be worn or even moved, he places his hand upon them to cover them so that people will not see them until he reaches his house, at which point he removes them. If he was sitting in the study hall with phylacteries on his head, and the day of Shabbat or the festival was sanctified, for which he was unprepared, he places his hand upon them until he reaches his house. Rav Huna, son of Rav Ika, raised an objection from the following teaching. If one was coming on the road with phylacteries on his head, and the day was sanctified before he arrived at his destination, he places his hand upon them until he reaches the house nearest the wall, where he removes them and leaves them there. If he was sitting in the study hall outside the city, and the day was sanctified for which he was unprepared, he places his hand upon them until he reaches a house that is near the study hall, where there are people who can guard the phylacteries. This shows that one may not bring phylacteries all the way to his house, but only to the nearest place within the city boundary. The Gemara answers this is not difficult. This Beitzah, which teaches that one places the phylacteries in the house nearest the wall, is referring to a case where the phylacteries can be safeguarded there. Whereas that Beitzah, which states that he may bring them all the way to his house, deals with the situation where they are not safeguarded in the nearest house. The Gemara challenges this. If the Beitzah is dealing with a case where the phylacteries are not safeguarded, why discuss specifically the case of the phylacteries that were on his head? Even if one was not donning them, but found them placed on the ground, he should also be required to don them and bring them to the house. For didn't we learn in the Mishnah, Eruvin 95a, One who finds phylacteries lying in a field outside the city on Shabbat should don them and bring them into the city, one pair at a time. The Gemara answers, this is not difficult. This Beitzah, where it was taught that one need not don the phylacteries if they were not already on his head, is referring to a situation where they are safeguarded from thieves and also from dogs. That Mishnah which stated that even if one found them on the ground, he must put them on and bring them into the city, is referring to a case where they are safeguarded from dogs, but are not safeguarded from thieves. The Gemara clarifies the novel element of the Mishnah's ruling. Lest you say, since most thieves are Jews, is that true? Who would not treat phylacteries with contempt. Oh, since most thieves are Jews who would not treat phylacteries with contempt, I don't know if that's true either. One should not be allowed to carry them because there is no danger that they will be desecrated if they are left in their place. The Mishnah teaches that the halacha takes the minority of cases into account. It is therefore appropriate to don the phylacteries and bring them into the city. And this concludes the first chapter of Beitzah. Beitzah Shinol Yom Tov. Beitzah. And we'll continue with 15b on the next video.